So previously I set up some very basic proxy geometry. However, the proxy geometry will be useless in the game engine without a skeleton. In this case, I'm just going to set up this skeleton for Unity. I could set this up so it will work in Unreal as well, but that's beyond what I need at the moment. This is a very temporary skeleton. Essentially, it will allow me to work with existing motion capture and work on basic controls. This skeleton will be replaced soon with a fully animatable rig. That rig will be for basic animation. There will then be a more complex rig which can be animated and driven by the previous rig. Finally, there will be a version of that rig which will allow for facial animation with a full facial rig. But for the moment, I just want a basic skeleton so I can test with. This is not something which is going to be preserved or built upon. It's purely for testing with existing animation and motion capture, and it can be considered to be a bit of a throwaway rig. I'll get a geometry node. This node will be renamed to skeleton. I'll enter this node. I'll get the skeleton node, and we can draw out the spine. I'll make sure that I'm in create mode, that I have tweak turned off, and that I'm drawing in freehand mode. I'll then draw out the skeleton. I'll need a joint for the hips, the spine, the chest, the upper chest, the neck, the head, and I want one extra joint in this chain for the end of the head, which will be the head effector, and this will be at the top of the head. I'll then activate modify joints, and I can start renaming the joints. First we'll have the hips, then the spine, the chest, the upper chest, the neck, the head, and the head effector. So that will give us our basic spine. I'll add a second skeleton node. I'm going to use this node to draw out our arms. I'll merge this node together with our spine. I'll need to activate create mode, and I'll start drawing out these bones in the front view. I'll go from the clavicle to the shoulder, to the elbow, to the wrist. I'll then need an effector, which will be at the end of the hand, between the knuckles for the index finger and the ring finger. I will add a third skeleton node. This will be for the legs, and will be connected to the merge node after the previous two skeleton nodes. I'll draw out these nodes in the side view. These will go from the thigh, to the knee, to the ankle. Then we will have the foot bend. Technically the foot itself will not actually bend. Instead we'll bend at the toes, but this doesn't really matter for the moment. The final joint will be at the tip of our toes, which will be for our foot effector. Neither the legs or arms will be workable, so I'll need to update them. I'll activate modify mode. I'll align the thigh in the front view. I can then adjust the knee, followed by the ankle. In this case, I won't really need to do much with the foot, so I'll leave this for the moment. These limbs will all need to be connected to each other, so we'll get a parent joints node, and this will be connected after the merge node. However, I won't actually parent them yet. I still need to fix up the arms. The first joint can be renamed. Here I rename it incorrectly. This should actually be the left clavicle. The naming here is actually reasonably important. I need to make sure that I name my sides correctly. I'll align my shoulder with the center of the deltoid. I can then align my elbow along with my wrist. I'll start renaming these joints. We have the left shoulder. I'll fix the name for the left clavicle. We'll then have the left elbow, the left wrist, and I'll call the left hand the left wrist effector. I'll merge the arms and legs together separately. This is not technically necessary, but this is an easy way to organize this. I can then get a mirror skeleton node, and I'll connect it after the merge node. This will mirror my arms and my legs. This will give me my final structure for the rig, and I should now be able to do the parenting for the rig. The upper chest should be the parent of the clavicle. In this case, I'll connect this to the left clavicle, but I'll specify that this will apply to both clavicles by replacing left with an asterisk. I could try and do the same for the thigh, but I haven't named the joints correctly yet. First we'll have the left thigh. This will be followed by the left knee, the left ankle, the left foot, and finally the left foot effector. The hips will now be the parent of the left thigh, and I'll replace left with an asterisk so that this will apply for both legs. Our parenting should now be working, but the naming will be incorrect, so I'll return to the mirror skeleton node. I'll work in the naming section. I'll set my find token to be left, and we're going to replace left with right. I should now have the start of a basic skeleton. Should be able to activate the names, and the joint names should be correct for the most part. I can update the orientations using an orient joints node. The default orientations are never quite as good as you want. The orient joints node will also have its own issues. These are utility nodes and they'll give you orientations which are good enough, especially if you just want to work with motion capture. These will also be good enough for my basic purposes within Unity, as all the animation will be retargeted, but I wouldn't use these orientations in an actual rig. I'll activate the visualizations for my orientations. I will also update the visualizations. I'll scale them down from 1 to 0.1. I'll test out the orient joints node. I'll test this with the basic reference vector. I'll test this with some basic up vector orientations, but I'm not particularly happy with these. They're actually worse than what I had by default. I can change the reference vector, but this is also not good enough. So I can delete this. This is only going to be used with motion capture, so it should be good enough, as the retargeting will compensate for this. So we'll stick with the default orientations for now. I also don't want to spend too much time on this rig, as it is going to be disposed reasonably soon, so this skeleton will do for now. We have our mesh and we have our skeleton. Next I'm going to connect them in a rig, and then I'm going to export them into Unity, and we're going to test to see if we can get animation working with them.